Welcome to the Mischief. I'm Valen and this is Vintage Story. Today I'm going to be taking you through your day 1 tutorial. So first thing that we're going to do today, pause the game. Yep, I know, not very immersive. Don't be afraid to go into your settings and change things. Sometimes your sound levels might be a little bit off or something like that. You might need to adjust your mouse and so on. But I do want to call your attention over to the interface over here. Block info overlay. This will basically tell you information about the block that you're looking at. If you're familiar with Minecraft, there are several mods that often will do that. Instead, this is built into this game. Second to that is going to be block interaction help. This is going to tell you what you can do with an item or how to harvest it or what you need to do in order to harvest it if you're trying to do so. Then there is, of course, coordinates over on the right there. You've got your mini map. You also have immersive mouse mode. I'm choosing to keep this one on myself because I like to see the inventories above the inventory. Whereas if you don't have that turned on, it will just have them start piling up on one side of the screen and you're unsure which chest is associated with each inventory. So I like to keep immersive mouse mode on. It just helps me keep things organized and a little bit more visually pleasing. That being said, you can always go into the survival guide by clicking this button here. Otherwise, you can just press the H key while in game. And if you want to pause or unpause things, you just press this here and it will do so if you're in single player. And this is basically how you're going to find anything in the game regarding guides or tips or crafting recipes and such. This is the Survival Handbook. So before we start any of those, let's actually take a look at what we've got. I have a hotbar at the bottom. I have my left hand or my offhand. On the right side, you'll see some basket icons. This is your inventory storage. You currently don't have an inventory short of your own crafting grid. This is your crafting grid. This is the output. You have no internal inventory short of your hotbar, which is 1 through 0, and some items that can go in your offhand. So how do we fix that and increase our inventory size because we want to carry all the stuff in the world? Well, that's where we're going to go into the tutorials of first steps. Clicking start here should get that going, and then you can always just close this. And it walks you through a few things. Of course, your directional controls, WASD is to move around. You can use space to jump, and sneak is shift. This doesn't necessarily make you sneakier, but it does mean that you can move slower when you're close to an edge, so you don't need to worry about it. Here's a little tip. If you press the G key while sneaked up to an edge, you can then sit just like this with your feet dangling over the edge. That aside, you're going to want to walk forward and press Control in order to get yourself running. And it will take up a little bit more of your hunger meter while you're doing this, as well as some other physically demanding tasks will bring your hunger bar down, which is this green bar on the right. The red bar on the left is your health, and your temporal stability is in the middle. You never want to see your gear get too low, because if you do, all sorts of bad mobs and things like that are going to start happening around you, and yeah, you're probably not going to live very long. But continuing on, we're going to hold left Alt to move our mouse around as I was talking, and then you can click here to continue. Press E to open the inventory. C opens your character inventory, which gives you a ton of different stats. Your different clothes, which have warmth values, you can apply cloth to them of different types in order to increase their condition and repair them. You can also wear armor in these slots here. You can wear different trinkets and things like that on the right side, which may or may not also help protect you from the elements or just look really cool. And then, of course, it tells you the information. It's the 1st of May, year 0, we're at 10 in the morning, the outside temperature. Rainfall in this area is common, and the current rift activity is high. Now, this represents the rifts that appear in the world. If you've seen my previous videos on this, you'll know that there are these weird brown pulsating things in the world that can spawn mobs. It'll do so a lot more at nighttime. In the broad daylight, you probably won't see many, if any at all. Then, of course, you've got your nutrition. The better your nutrition, the more hit points that you will gain. This is your baseline hit points is 15 to start with if you're a commoner. Depending on the class you choose, it may be less or more, but you can also increase your maximum health just by increasing your nutrition value. If you die, your nutrition values will drop. Your body temperature, you're going to want to keep this around 37.8 or thereabouts. If it gets too low, you could start freezing to death. Your walk speed, healing effectiveness, hunger rate, ranged accuracy, and charge speed. This is all dependent on your class stats as well as your current activity. If you're holding something in your offhand, for example, your hunger rate will go up. If you're wearing a heavier armor, your hunger rate will go up, your walk speed will go down, your healing effectiveness will quite likely go down as well as your ranged accuracy and other stuff. There may be other things that might increase these, but for the most part, they're going to be affected by what you are wearing or doing. And if you look at that block overlay, when I'm looking at things here, you can see that it is showing up as to what I need to do. You can see it says we're going to need a knife or a scythe in order to collect this grass effectively, because if I just punch it, it just goes away. Continuing on with the guide on the right here, it says find 3 knappable stones found loosely on the ground. Collect them using the right or left mouse buttons. Something you should be aware of while doing so is that some animals might not like you, or at least might not like you in their face. Now, you can see here I've got a ewe and a ram. The ram doesn't like people nearby and might actually try headbutting you if you get a little too close. But the ewe is really not going to care, more or less, unless, of course, you do them damage, in which case you're going to want to watch out. So don't just go around punching things unless you're looking for death. That being said, we've got some stones nearby. Now, when it says knappable stones, and I'm just right-clicking to pick these up, that means stones that aren't soft. There are some types, like sandstone, that might be a little bit too soft for you to actually use for working tools. Therefore, you're going to have to keep looking until you find something a bit more appropriate. When you are picking up those stones in the world, if you pick up something that's a little bit different, like granite stones or copper pieces or something like that, that could represent, actually it does represent, exactly those stones located somewhere not too far below the surface. So if you are going to destroy those things by picking them up, thus losing the marker of where it is, you might be at a disadvantage if you want to find them in the future. Well, not to worry, you can press the M key for your world map. Now, if you've disabled this, I'm sorry, this won't be appropriate to you, but this means that you can then have an option of saving locations on your map. Just grabbing it with my left mouse button and dragging it around, you can move things here and there. By pressing the space bar, it will recenter on your character. Let's say I wanted to keep a marker here of where this spawn area is. By right-clicking, I then get this waypoint option. I can name it what I want. I'll just say this is where I spawned in. If you pin it, that means on your mini-map, it will still stay on the edge even if you walk away from it. So you can still find your location quickly and easily without having to bring up your entire world map. You can choose the color that you want of this. I'm going to pick a nice bright pink, and then I'm going to use this big star here for that. Click save, and you can see we now have a big pink star here that's labeled as spawn, waypoint 0. You can continue doing this with other things as well. If you don't want it, you can just delete it just by right-clicking on here and clicking delete. There are also macros that you can add in so that if I walked over here, press a macro key, I then created a waypoint on here that has a question mark, just something that I can just add real quick while I'm running around. Maybe I'm being chased by a bear. Let's hope that doesn't happen. This represents copper bits. I'm going to want to keep an eye on this. Bringing up my map, I will want to right-click, press this, and choose a color and an option. And sometimes some of the options actually have already information filled in here. You can just click save, so I didn't even have to type the word copper. And now it has a little orange pick icon in that area. Now that I have 3 of these, I can find 5 sticks found on the ground in forests or when breaking leaves with branches. And this is just a cranberry bush. It's not leaves. So you're not going to want to break these unless you want to take them with you, of course. So you're going to want to look around in the world for something more along the lines of this, but these are just regular birch leaves. By breaking these by hand, you're not going to get sticks because they're not sticky branch leaves. Those ones are just regular birch leaves, and you're likely to get maybe some a seed from it or something like that by breaking these. So you're going to want to keep looking around a little more. Over here you've got maple branchy leaves. There we go. That's something more along the lines of what I'm looking for. You can also find sticks on the ground, and then you just right-click to pick them up like you did with the stones. But otherwise, you just pick up a bunch of these until you have enough for your tutorial. At this point, it's telling me that I'm going to want to take some of these stones that I've had, and I'm going to want to knap them. So if you find an empty space, or you just clear an empty space, you then sneak right-click with your stones. Do it again if you have something that isn't flint, and it'll turn into a recipe along here. Now, some stone types will have different options for what you can choose. Flint is one of them that will give you a few more. Specifically, you can get some arrowheads from it. But in this case, we're going to go with something a bit simpler, a granite knife blade. This is going to allow us to harvest multiple different things. And all you need to do, if you look here, I'll actually get my shadow over it to make it a little bit easier to see, is you want to knock out anything that has a highlighted area on here. If you want to get close to it, you can press G to sit down. If you want to hold your screen still, instead of like moving your entire screen while doing this, just hold the Alt key like you would for moving your mouse pointer, and it makes it a lot simpler to actually break these. You notice the entire section broke away. You don't need to break everything, going around destroying it all. You just need to break away the section that's attached to what you're trying to make. In this case, a knife blade. Opening up my inventory, I can take that knife blade and I can add it to a stick, making a granite knife. As it says here, you can actually click on this and it will give you information in your Survival Handbook on how you can make one. So you could choose in here the granite knife that I'm currently trying to make, and it can tell you it's an ingredient for any of these other items, and it's created by taking a granite knife blade and a stick in a crafting grid. It's also storable in these different options. Yes, there is ground storage. I will explain this momentarily. But taking out your granite knife and closing my inventory, I now have an option of being able to harvest some things. Remember before when I punched grass? Now when I do this, I actually can pick up a piece of grass. We're going to harvest something a little bit different than just grass. We're going to go for cattails. You might be in a different climate. It might be something a little bit different from cattails. You can use just your fists on this instead of a knife if you really want, but keep in mind that when you do so, you lose the entire plant, and it's you don't get the entire plant. If you continue harvesting beyond the tops of these cattails, then you'll actually get a little something extra, and that's going to be the cattail root. These are one of the things that you can cook in a fire pit to eat if you are desperate, but keep in mind cattails cannot be duplicated. You cannot make more of them. You actually just have to move them, pick them up, take them with you, or whatever. This means it can be replanted on grass or in shallow waters if you want to have some near to whatever base you might have. That aside, I need to harvest a few more of these things, so let me go get that. So why are we harvesting this? This is to make our first level of inventory storage, and that should take care of the first one. Just by opening my inventory and crafting grid again, I can take these and I can actually just drag them through here in my inventory, making a hand basket. Now, again, it doesn't have to be reeds, it can be papyrus as well. There may be some other options in the future, but for now, there we go. I can then put that hand basket in a little hand basket slot, and you notice I now have 3 inventory spots that I can store some stuff in, and I don't have to have it on my hotbar. Nice. But hey, it says don't forget about food, collect 10 berries, mushrooms, wild crops, or other edibles. So it's time to start doing a little bit of an explore, hopefully avoiding any kind of large predators like wolves or bears, and finding some of these tasty treats. I know that there's one right here, a black currant bush. Just by holding right click, I harvest from it because it was ripe, and I got 4 black currants. This already has completed most of what I'm looking for, but I know that we also have options of mushrooms and other crops. Looking over here, I've got some other crops to choose from. Mature flax. This is perfect for harvesting, and you don't have to have any kind of knife to do so. It just says left click to break to harvest. And on doing so, I got several drops from this. This is important because at the highest level stage, level 9, you're most likely to get all the drops from it. In this case, I got flax fibers, which is a really key ingredient for most things later on. You got the seeds, so you can replant this on some tilled farmland. And then you got some flax grain, which is an edible material that you can also process to be even better saturating for you than what it currently is, which isn't very much when you eat it. It just gives you this tiny amount. But nonetheless, it will actually give you a little bit of nutrition regardless. So in that case, I've got 12 on my grain now. Now, continuing on, though, we've got growing flax. This is 4 out of 9. It's not in one of the last 3 stages of growth, so you're not going to get anything from it if you harvest it. You're going to want these to grow, or even till the ground below them to try and help them grow a little faster. If they're in the last 3 stages of growth, there's a chance that you'll be getting some of the drops. The later the stage, the more drops you're likely to get. Now you may find some mushrooms specifically in more wetlands areas, maybe forested areas as well, but I'm not going to be going into there because usually forests mean an increase in the population of wolves and a decrease in my survival rate. Here we go, we've got some more growing onions, level 6 out of 7. Oh, I only got the seeds, but it's better than nothing. Hidden behind this tree, you'll see that we've got some mushrooms. Death caps, that sounds lovely to eat. Let's harvest them. Yep. You have to use a knife, otherwise you're not going to get anything from them. And it's just out of my reach, so I'm going to have to come around here, pick it up. And it may have connected for the tutorial, but keep in mind that when you hover over something like this, it's not the best for you. It's fresh for 18 days. When eaten, it gives you 80 saturation on here, which each of these little blips represents 100. So it'll give you most of a blip. But if you look next to that, minus 50 hit points. 50, and I only have 15, so I don't want that. I don't even want to give that to my friends. No, because that's just going to be bad. So walk away from things like that. If it doesn't have a hit point reduction, then it should be safe to eat. There's some more berries over here. Let's just grab those, and that should finish it up. Okay, time to invent fire. Craft an axe. Use 2 knappable stones to make an axe head, then combine it with a stick in your inventory. I'm going to show you a little trick here as well, and that might involve a victim. But first, we nap. By sneak right-clicking twice, I can then open up the granite axe head option. I can then just nap away the excess here. There we go. I've knocked this one out. It's a dead salmon. I can now sneak and right-click with my knife and harvest it just like I would for something else. You also notice that I've got a breath meter going on here. I need to get out of the water before that expires. So let's grab this raw fish that I have. I don't really want to have it in my inventory. Close this out and it leaves a little carcass. This is the same with most animals out there. And if I had space in my inventory, I'd pick that up. So let's actually get rid of this piece of dry grass. Grab this. And instead, I could feasibly take this bone and make a granite axe with a bone handle. Now this is an option for axes and knives. You can actually make one that has a little bit more durability than one that has a stick handle. But as this is a tutorial, I'm going to want to make sure to stick to what it asks for. Now it wants me to chop down a small tree and get at least 4 logs. Looking on here, it looks like I've got about 6 or 7 logs on this one. I'll give it a go. If you chop down the leaves on a tree before you chop down the logs itself, you have a better chance of getting sticks and seeds and saplings and stuff like that from these. If not, well, you're just going to get the logs and you might get a slight chance of getting some of those other options, but not nearly as much. You might actually have to go through multiple axes depending upon how big the tree is. So by digging a little bit of dirt up and placing it up above, I'm able to actually create a safe shelter for any fire that I might make in the future. But first, in order to make fire, we're going to need to make firewood. So by placing your logs underneath an axe, you can then start making a bunch of firewood with this. If you want to place it, you can. You just sneak right click and it will actually place down these, and it is directional, so you can actually switch this around as you want. If you want to pick them back up, you just right click. You don't need to sneak. So now that I've got some dry grass, because that was the next step, was actually to cut some. I did so very quickly. You just sneak and right click to place it under a sheltered spot, because if it's raining, oh, it's a beautiful night, but if it's raining, it might put your campfire out. You don't want that to happen. Then you sneak right click and place some firewood in your new campfire. Once that's completed, you can right click and open up your fire. You can even take out the firewood that was in there or put it back in. In this case, I'm just going to leave it in there. In fact, I'm going to put the rest of it in there because it's getting dark and I'm not too worried about it. I will need to craft a fire starter though. It doesn't even tell you how to do so. You're going to need to learn to actually click and understand to use the Survival Handbook at this point. 1 dry grass and 2 sticks. Okay. 1 dry grass, open up my inventory, and then I should be able to craft this with a couple dry sticks. There we go. I now have this. I can sneak, right click and hold it, and it will start trying to light the fire. Let me close this so you can see it a little bit easier. It even gives you the information above the campfire if you want to know how to do it. It may take several tries before you're able to get it lit. It might start right away. It's kind of random. And if you want to put some things down before we continue on making torches, because we have light, so I'm not as concerned as I was before, you can sneak, control, and place some items. If it's a taller item, like let's say a shovel or a spear, you're probably going to want to put that on something that has 2 blocks tall instead of 1. But as I don't really need it so much, I can sneak, right-click, and place things like knives and axes and other tools like that. In this case, I'm putting the Firestarter there. Now it says I need to create torches to boil meat, cattail roots, or to make meals. I need to craft a torch next. So I'm going to get a couple pieces of grass, dry grass specifically, combine it with a single stick, doesn't have to be multiple, and you get a torch. Putting it in here, it will light the torch up once it gets to its conversion temperature of 300 degrees Celsius. There we go. And it might actually take a bit of time for it to process if it's cooking something else. In this case, I'm going to put some raw fish in there while this thing's cooking so that I can take advantage of that. But I now have a torch. And it says, congratulations, you now know the basics. You can, until then, check out the starter guide, which you can then click on here, open it up, and read all about that. But before, we get a little too carried away with that, there's something I wanted to show you. Remember how I said that there was hunger mechanics? If you have an item in your offhand, in this case, you can't just put anything in your offhand, but some things like light sources can be. You'll notice that your hunger rate goes up. Doesn't change anything about your visibility, just means that you can hold on to 2 things at once. You can like interact with an axe, you can chop and harvest things, you can run around out in the darkness. But if you take it off of off of there, then your hunger rate goes back down to normal. So if you are starving or getting close to that or something along those lines, keep in mind you're probably going to want to keep that a little bit safe. Now otherwise, you can also sneak, right click, and you will light things on fire, or just click to place it, and then you can break it again. Now with that being said, that fish that I had here is now done, and I can eat that. It says here when eaten 200 saturation, so that's 2 blips of food when I eat this. There we go, I'm now almost full on my food. Not too bad. Something else you should be aware of is if you have a torch in hand and you're standing in shallow water, you're fine, but if you sneak or stand in 2 block deep water, your torch goes out. Because when you sneak in water, you're trying to actually tread, so you will be dousing your torch. But not to worry, you can always take it and relight it in your fire pit. Ooh, cooked cattail roots. I'll take some of those. Something you might also want to consider, if you're flush with food, you could potentially pass some time. By pressing the C character key, you can see what time of day or night it is. Currently, it's about 11 p.m. at night. So I could take some of this dry grass and craft it into 3 hay grass, turn that into a hay bed. Now, notice my hunger rate. I'm about 2 blips down. By putting this on the ground and sleeping, hopefully in a way that is, a spot that's safe from other nearby creatures, then I can pass the time. You can see that the night is currently spinning by rather quickly, and I'll get about 7 hours of sleep before I get up. And you'll notice that my hunger is now very much lower than it was before. So if you're feeling okay, if you're feeling confident about that, you can put your torch away now, then go for it your first night or other nights. But also keep in mind that the less time you spend doing stuff, the faster that the winter seasons are going to be coming along. And with that, I think we'll call it here. I hope you enjoyed this early on look as how to survive your first day or so of Vintage Story. If you like this video, please be sure to give a like, comment, subscribe, and as always, I'll see you guys next time.